A year ago, this garden used to look just like this hillside over here, boring and covered with ivy. However, with just a little bit of work, I was able to plant flowers, fruits, and vegetables. Except tomatoes and eggplants are apparently classified as fruits, so I guess it's just a flower and fruit garden. But regardless, if you stick around, I'll show you how to start a basic and simple garden in your own yard without building any additional structures. First thing you will need is, well, a spot for your garden. There are plants for pretty much any space, whether it gets a lot of sun or almost none. But you might want to stick around to the end of the video before settling on one specific spot. Once you get a spot, however, you can get straight to work. And that brings us to the first real step in gardening, which is soil prep. If you want your garden to be successful, you have to give your plants the ability to succeed, which is done by adding organic matter to the soil. This includes compost, worm castings, garden soil, or soil conditioners. These, along with all the other gardening resources I use in this video, can be picked up at your local nursery or garden center. Whichever these amendments is most accessible to you will work. All you need to do is simply mix this in with the topsoil and you're good to go. Now, for the fun part. Picking plants is super exciting, but what you can plant depends completely on what season it is. Spring and fall are the best times for most plants, and that's also when I started this garden here, but it is also possible to start in summer. Just make sure to water regularly and shelter your plants from harsh hot or cold temperatures. Before settling on any one plant, you will need to check its light requirements. This is listed on the plant tag, and I would argue it is the #1 thing that can either make or break your garden. Keep an eye on the spot you chose throughout the day, and if it gets 3 or less hours of direct sun, you will need shade-loving plants. For 3 to 5 hours, you'll want partial shade plants, and for a bed that gets more than 5 hours of sun, you will need sun-tolerant plants. As mentioned before, all of this information can be found on the plants tag, and many nurseries are organized by light requirements. When you're shopping, take note of how big your space is, as well as the plant spacing listed on the tags. When choosing plants, there's no right choice, just express your own personal preferences. Nevertheless, I will briefly highlight some of what I've got planted. Side note, everything here was planted in late spring, so depending on what time you plant, your results may vary. These are by far the most successful plants I have in my collection. They are fairly tolerant to heat and high sun, and they make a lot of flowers. Plus, the dark green shiny leaves contrast the flowers very well, giving the plant an overall amazing look. Unlike the New Guinea Impatiens, regular Impatiens don't tolerate heat and sun nearly as well. So they don't have as nice of a look, and the plants are not as prolific as they could be, but despite this, they are still putting out a lot of flowers, and I think you can have great success with them. Here I also wanted to show you the plants that didn't work at all. These marigolds have not grown much or put on any new blooms, but there is still hope that they could take off in the slightly cooler weather in the fall. If something you plant doesn't do super well, don't lose hope, just keep in mind that it could do better in the next season. Planting fruits and vegetables can add a level of functionality to your garden. I would highly encourage you to mix these in with your flowers. I don't have much else to say about these two vines though, because they've just started producing, but I do have high hopes. As you can see, this one is already starting to form a little fruit. Homegrown cherry tomatoes have a unique sweet flavor that is lost in store-bought tomatoes. They're fairly easy to grow if you give them enough water, and they're overall solid plants. Also note that these two plants are in a pot. If you don't have any yard space, you can always consider having a container garden on your porch or patio. Just remember that during the summer, plants in containers will need to be watered more regularly. These are very heavy producers, like a lot of sun, and are great in a variety of recipes. All around, a pretty great plant. This is actually a wildflower in my area that I didn't personally plant. Incorporating wildflowers can help to attract more pollinators, and I would highly recommend it if you're growing fruits and vegetables as well. Any new garden will need to be fertilized regularly in order to replenish nutrients in the soil. This is supposed to be done about 2 to 3 times a month. You can either use a dilute tin fertilizer like this one, or what I personally use is an organic vegetable fertilizer. This is less harsh and releases nutrients into the soil slower than the dissolved fertilizer. A quick tip for flowers is to fertilize them much less often than your other plants. This can help to promote more blooms and less leaves for a fuller looking plant. Using bone meal, which is high in phosphorus but low in nitrogen, can be great for flowering or fruiting gardens. It also has calcium, magnesium, and iron, which can help to support healthier plants. The two things you will need to do almost daily are watering your plants, which should take about 20 seconds per plant, and pulling up weeds. Weeds can be daunting at times since there are a lot of them, but all you need to do is grab them at the base and pull it up. If you don't, it will steal nutrients from your soil, causing your other plants to have problems. In your first year, feel free to experiment a little. Just try to get something planted. This garden is in its first year, and as you can see, not all the plants succeeded. These marigolds are a prime example of that, and the pink impatiens didn't do super great either. But because of how well these other plants, such as the New Guinea impatiens, the eggplants, and the tomatoes did, I have a better idea of what to do in this spot for next year. This is why your first year you will probably want to do mostly annuals, since if an annual does poorly, you don't have to commit to having it in your garden year after year. If you continue to fertilize your plants, the soil in subsequent years will continue to improve from a combination of the fertilizer and the plant's roots breaking up the soil. So even if your garden doesn't do super great the first year, relax. You'll probably have better success the next year. With all that being said, thank you so much for watching to the end. I really appreciate it. If you'd like to support my channel and help it grow, please consider liking, commenting, or subscribing. I also have an Instagram at CFG Designs where I post daily. If you tag your garden at CFG Designs, I will post it on my story. Go check it out, and I hope you have a wonderful day.